Welcome back to That's Life with John Carver. Today I want to do something a little different on the show. Normally for That's Life with John Carver we do a talk show. But today I want to share some thoughts with you on really several things. But the big picture today is about paying the price. Back in 2007, our youngest daughter, Juliana, was fighting cancer for the first time. And I decided that in order to keep from imploding, that I should start writing. So I put a book together, started writing chapters in a book that we've called Rising from the Hood. It's been out now for a number of years. That's the first of 4 books that I've put out. And I realized very quickly that when you and I tend to focus on helping other people through their struggles and through their difficulties, then while you're helping other people, many times it kind of boomerangs back at you and helps you too. So that's been my what I've been doing the last several years, whether it's the weekly blog that I do that goes out to several thousand people every week, or the talk shows that we do, or the teachings that we do, and or the newspaper articles and other things that we do to try to educate people and inspire other people, but also it bounces back, because some of the stuff that I share, if I was brutally honest with you, I'm still trying to master myself. So in my first book, again, it's called Rising from the Hood, there's a chapter in it, and I called it Paying the Price. And today, I just want to share that chapter. And it might be a little weird to read to you on the show, but there is some information in here that I think will help you in your life. Again, paying the price is the big theme today. The chapter starts that the concept of paying the price covers many types of situations. It certainly goes hand in hand with the prior chapter of this book. The easiest way to see the concept of paying the price is in sports. If you look at any player on most teams, you must admit that they have achieved greatness because of the time they have put into practicing their craft. Years ago, I used to think that certain people were born with special genes, that they could really go places and do things because they seem to have just fallen into their success. Well, the older I get, the more I realize that that is not the case at all. The chapter goes on. Dave Thomas, founder of Wendy's hamburger place, he said, "Don't be afraid to be unique or speak your mind, because that's what makes you different from everyone else. Many of you reading this book have a dream deep inside of you that you think can never come to pass. I want to encourage you to throw away those thoughts every time they enter your mind." I am reminded of the words of Dr. Frank Richards that lived up until 1961. He says, quote, "All big things in this world are done by people." Listen. All big things in this world are done by people who are naive and have an idea that it's obviously impossible. What he's saying here is that there have been so many people who have succeeded in life because they didn't know they could not excel, so they excelled. It's like the 9-month-old baby who just started walking on her own. She didn't know that other babies started walking after they're a year old. No one told her, so she walked. It is that blind ignorance that you have to have in order to change your life. Think about that a minute. Sometimes when you don't know that it's not impossible, you just do it. That's been the key to so many people that I've met over the years and or read about, is they just realize that, you know what, it is not impossible, so why not me? The chapter goes on. Mary Kay Ash, founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics and philanthropist, once said, quote, "Those people blessed with the most talent don't necessarily perform everyone else. It's the people with follow-through who excel. Those with, quote, stick-to-itiveness are the ones who always climb to the top." Stick-to-itiveness, very, very key. Many times I've been in neighborhoods where young men are on basketball courts playing games that would rival any professional franchise. This has been accomplished because the young men have developed a habit of practicing their sport regularly. If this is possible with sports, then it's possible with academics. Many school systems, knowingly or not, support the disfranchisement model. Many schools do not have classes for the gifted and talented, while others promote children to the next grade who cannot read or write. Other school systems promote athletic skill by offering free scholarships, while those who get high SAT scores receive little or no help at all. What message is this sending to our inner cities? It is a message that academics are not as important as sports. Institutions must be willing to make the leap and place more value on our inner city citizens' brains instead of their skills in sports. Their brains will have much more potential long after their bodies can no longer play sports. Let me give you a broader picture of my book, Rising from the Hood. Since 1988, I've worked in the insurance business. I've sold insurance, I've hired people, I've built agencies, in a variety of different places. And the majority of my career has been serving people in the urban areas of Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and other places. So investing a number of years, a lot of years, in these areas helped me create this book, Rising from the Hood. No, I'm not trying to sell you the book. I just want to share with you the backstory of why I wrote the book. So the chapter called Paying the Price continues. It says, I know of a man who was in his early 20s who could not read. He met a young lady whom he loved desperately and knew that if he was to get anywhere, he had to learn to read. On top of that serious issue, he had dyslexia. He decided to take matters into his own hands and was able to acquire a recording of a large book. He purchased the recording and would play the recording over and over again and follow along in the book. It helped him tremendously to develop a functional reading ability that has improved dramatically over the years. This would not have occurred if he didn't commit to place himself in a situation that would have forced him to excel. Today, he is known as an expert in his field around the world. It's so easy to make excuses for what you can't do. I'm talking to me too. It's really easy to find reasons why you can't do certain things instead of doing things even though it's very, very difficult in the beginning. Doing these shows was not easy for me. I can remember the first one or two I did. It wasn't very pretty. Not to say that this is pretty, but it was very difficult for me, for sure. The story goes on. There's another story of a young boy who had a speech impediment. He stuttered. During his entire young life, he went all through school and he made a decision to try to blend into the woodwork, as the saying goes. He didn't want anybody to notice him and definitely didn't want anyone to call him to speak. Whenever he was called on to answer a question in school, he would shrug his shoulders and say that he didn't know the answer so he wouldn't have to say a word. In one situation, he was roped into becoming a part of the county spelling bee. Each contestant got words wrong. They were dismissed from the competition. The number of people in the spelling bee was shrinking to about 8. The young boy felt pressure mounting on him, which would certainly display itself in the way he spoke. When it was his turn to spell a word, he purposely got the word wrong because he was too afraid to be embarrassed in front of hundreds of people. He was unwilling to pay the price of embarrassment in order to win the spelling bee. Guess who that little boy was? Me. Lansdowne Middle School. That's where it happened. In Baltimore County, Maryland. I was terrified to speak. Terrified. And then I lost out on larger opportunities because I allowed fear to be my motivator instead of excellence to be my motivator. The chapter continues. In Baltimore, Maryland, there was a beautiful white-haired lady named B. Gaddy. She opened up her home to the homeless and hungry in her community because she saw a need and did all she could to fill it. Again, she saw a need and did all she could to fill it. She organized consistent food drives that fed hundreds of people every day. Her efforts enabled her to win public office and expand her ability to help more people beyond the issue of hunger. She began with her passion, and her passion was noticed. Again, she began with her passion, and her passion was noticed. Ms. Gaddy died several years ago, but she lives on in the lives she touched that will never be the same because of her passion. Today I'm talking about passion and your work ethic and not giving up and not quitting. The story goes on page 78. I wonder how many people sell themselves short by not going out on a limb and ignoring what people say about their attempts or even their actions. Paying the price is exactly what it takes to reach your dreams. In many states, you have to pay a fee to take a bridge or a tunnel. If you don't pay the fare, then you will not be able to cross the bridge or tunnel legally. Life is the same way. There is always a fare to pay for greatness. It is never free. If people around you who cannot seem to appreciate your attempts, then they are the ones who will be left behind. You must make the decision that you will do anything within ethical and moral boundaries to do what is necessary to learn everything about your dream. I've been around the barn a few times, and I've seen so many, and I'll use the term older because many of you think I'm older, but I'm not. But I'm talking people in their 70s and 80s and 90s that are really older, and they haven't even started living yet because they've made excuses over the years so many times, and they're just living an average and ordinary life. The chapter goes on. At the same time, it is important for you to know what is your why. Again, what is your why? Most Americans simply go through life accidentally. Accidentally. They have no destination and no plan to get where they're going. The winners, listen to this one. The winners study hard to find out what their gifts are and find out how to maximize them. They work really hard to find out what their gifts are. It's critical that you locate people that you want to copy. You need lots of people around you who are going where you want to go. Again, you need lots of people around you that are going where you want to go. That is, you have to recruit your own team. Your team's not going to come find you. They're not going to come looking for you. You have to go find them and attach yourself to them. If not, then it's going to take you a lot longer to get where you're trying to get to. He says, Charlie Jones, in fact, I say on the book, Charlie Jones once said that your life will change because of the people you meet and the books you read. Again, Charlie Jones, who I met before he passed, he said, your life will change because of the people you meet and the books you read. Let me say that one more time. Your life will change because of the people you meet and the books you read. I cannot emphasize that enough. Your life will dramatically change if you choose to surround yourself with people that can literally change the way you look at everything. But you have to be the proactive person to do that. It doesn't happen accidentally. It has to happen on purpose. Paying the price means divorcing yourself from the people in your life that are not headed in the right direction. Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad Poor Dad fame said, quote, security is opposite to freedom. Again, security is opposite to freedom. This is so true. Many of those in urban America may not realize that they are in their own self-imposed prison. I might suggest that not just some people in the urban areas, but people in the rural areas and everywhere in between, including the suburban areas, right? That is, people who do not take charge of their life and assume things will be the same as they have been in the past. I've been in so many homes in the mid-Atlantic area of the United States where people assume that just because things are means that that's the way they're going to be in the future. That doesn't always need to be the case. That doesn't always have to be true if you decide to change your life and to be proactive in what you do every day. The book goes on page 79. There is a segment in any neighborhood that is happy with things the way they have always been. They don't want to rock the boat. They insist on living life that others have lived in their neighborhood. And I know so many people that have been in any county that haven't been in any county in any state. They've been stuck right in their own zip code. That's incredible to me. I understand that they may not have transportation to get there, but certainly almost anyone can read or hear something about it. Listen to this. Paying the price always doesn't mean doing what you haven't done before, because you have been doing is not getting you closer to your goals. You have to do things that you haven't done before, or honestly, maybe even terrified to do what you haven't done before because of maybe intimidation, maybe because, nobody's in your family has ever done what you want to do. So what? It doesn't matter what they haven't done before. You might be the first person who does it. John Madden said, "The road to Easy Street goes through the sewer." Paying the price may mean that you get up extra early and walk to work, or take 5 buses because you want a certain job. It may mean that you apply for the same position. Listen to this. It may mean that you may have to apply for the same position over and over again until the boss hires you because of your tenacity. Did you hear that? There's a universal truth that tenacity is always honored and rewarded. Many times that is the case. The one who knocks the hardest, and one who calls the most, and the one who decides that, I'm going to do whatever I have to do in order to get where I need to get to, wins more times than not. There's another paragraph here that's important. I met a man recently who left the corporate life to begin a foundation to help children who've been stricken with cancer. He gave up the security of a high income for a greater cause. You also have a greater cause for yourself. Take a moment and write down 5 things. Listen, take a moment and write down 5 things that you cannot stand. You can't put up with it. That is, what you don't like about what is happening in your city or your county. Take your time, but I want you to think hard about it. As you look down your list, you will notice that at least a couple of these items, you will be willing to do whatever it takes to correct those issues. These items, listen, these items are your why for going out on a limb. As you can see, you have to have a why before you can have a how. That is, you have to know why you want things to change before you can figure out how to make those changes. There's so many easy ways to get where you want to get to, and there's patterns that have been duplicated by so many other people. All you have to do is duplicate those patterns, because patterns create changes in your life, whether it's working out consistently, or whether it's reading certain books, or whether it's hanging around different kinds of people that what you've been hanging around the last 5 years that haven't gotten you where you really need to go to, right? Paying the price involves more than just things. Listen to this. This is going to get a little personal now. My wife and I married in 1988. In 1989, we started trying to have children. For years, we tried while others around us had child after child. It was terribly painful and very emotional for us. After 8 years of trying to be parents, we decided to consider adoption. I began with a local service department in our area. We told them that we simply wanted to make a difference in the life of a child. I also told them that it didn't matter what, quote, herd the child was from, because all children need a good home. After much negotiation with the social services department, they would not allow us to adopt a child that, to be bluntly put, that was a different color than us, because they said that it wouldn't be a good fit. So we left that department with empty arms because we were white, to be blunt, and the child or the children that we were going to adopt happened to be black in the Baltimore, Maryland area. Less than a few months from that fateful day, one of my insurance clients called me. She happened to live in a neighborhood where shootings happened almost every day. When I got there, she said she was pregnant with her 4th child and did not want the baby. She knew that my wife and I were trying to have children and asked me if I wanted to adopt her unborn child. I asked her for a few days to talk it over with my wife. Within 3 days, I went back to her apartment to tell her that my wife and I were interested in adoption. I was horrified to hear that she chose not to wait for me and aborted her pregnancy. Absolute guilt surrounded my thinking. What if I had come a day earlier? Could I have saved the unborn child's life? I was too late. My heart was heavy for many, many years because of that incident. If I would have just gotten there just a little earlier, what would have happened to the child? The child could have lived. We could have raised the child as our own, because the child would have been our own, because we would have adopted the child. On page 82, I continue. Soon thereafter, my wife and I decided to attempt international adoption, since the system in the United States thought it was more important to keep kids in foster care than it was to give them a good home. We interviewed about 12 adoption agencies and chose an agency called Nightlight Christian Adoptions based out of California. By this time, we had saved a little money in our retirement accounts and some equity in our home. Since we were interested in having only 2 children, we asked the agency if we could adopt maybe 2 children at one time. They said it was okay. So one obstacle, it cost about $22,000 to travel to St. Petersburg, Russia, to adopt a little boy and a little girl that we had chosen. Where were we going to get this kind of money? It was obvious. We took a home equity loan out to make it possible. Some would say that's crazy to do such a thing for 2 children that we haven't even met yet. And there are times in your life when you have to do some extraordinary things in order to make a difference in somebody else's life, you know? The 2 children we adopted had lived in an orphanage their entire life, and they had never known the benefits of a family. They slept in rooms with more than 15 other children. They were malnourished, not socially trained, and definitely did not speak English. It was a gamble. So we adopted Ksenia and Ivan in February of 1998, and the results have been extraordinary. Less than a year later, we heard that 4 little babies from our new son's orphanage were available for adoption. We were still coping with the home equity loan and the loan payments from our adoption, the first adoption. After much conversation, my wife and I agreed to adopt one more time. We asked the adoption agency to send a video, and they sent a video, but they sent all the kids in the video. So we had to go through and let me just read it. The video had all of the babies on it, so we had to make a choice. That was next to impossible. After talking with family, we chose Alina, a petite 6 months old. This baby adoption was financed with my wife's retirement monies that her company had accumulated for her as she became a stay-at-home mom when we adopted our first 2 children. We renamed Lindsay Alina. She had grown into a beautiful girl that loves the spotlight, and we were finally done. Our family was complete. We had reached our goal of being parents, but more importantly, provided a family and a home to 3 awesome kids who had no hope. The story continues. The next year, I felt it was important to give back to some of the orphanages in St. Petersburg, Russia. Our small church, Faith Outreach Chapel, collected and donated over 1/2 ton of new clothes and toys and medicines and soccer balls. And so my parents decided to travel with me during that trip. So while making some last-minute purchases in a local Walmart store, the adoption agency called me on my cell phone while I had 2 shopping carts full of stuff for the trip. They had heard that I was going back overseas just for the humanitarian trip, and the attorney, Ron Stoddard, who runs the agency, got some notification from overseas that a little boy with crossed eyes and some health problems was turned down by 3 American families for adoptions. I stopped mid-sentence and said there was no way that we were adopting again because we had just adopted our 3rd and final kid just 6 months earlier. He understood, but for some reason I asked him how old the little boy was. His name's Sergey. He looked through his records and said that his birthday is May 4th, 1999. So mind you, I'm in a Walmart store with 2 carts. I started yelling, whoa, whoa, whoa. It was crazy. I was getting chills up and down my back. He said, John, is everything okay? I asked him to check the birth date again. By then I had chills in my arms and the back of my neck, and Mr. Stoddard got back on the phone and confirmed that Sergey's birthday is May 4th, 1999. I then spoke up and said, Ron, that's our 3rd child's birthday, Lindsay, May 4th, 1999. It was too weird and too coincidental. I asked them to send me the information about the trip before I left to go overseas for the humanitarian trip with my parents. When my parents and I finally arrived at the orphanage to donate the goods, the orphanage director paraded little Sergey into the room. He could not talk or walk much, and even though he was old enough to do so, I sat down on the floor in the director's office to play with him and try to communicate with a little bit of Russian that I understand, and I practiced it over and over before I left home. And so I said to him, good morning, my name is John, in Russian, of course. The director, who sat a few feet away from her desk, declared in Russian, "No, John, Daddy." Uh-oh. I knew my fate was sealed. He was to become my son and the virtual twin of our third child, Lindsay Alina. My wife and I decided to finance the adoption with MasterCard. Yep, the credit card. It was a debt that I will never regret. Timothy Sergey, as he is now known, has had an operation in Maryland to fix his eyes, and he's a pretty awesome kid. In fact, he is the producer and director of these shows. Check that out. You believe that? He's the producer and director of these very shows right now. Very talented young man. The story goes on. I'm so glad that I got the call about a little boy. I'm so glad I got a call about a little boy that seemed to have an issue. Now he's my boy, you know? Whew. Sorry. Page 85. We're done. 4 kids now, we're done. Until I decided to hold a meeting. Let me just pause on the book. And we're almost out of time. But I decided to have a meeting to help other families adopt, because we were done. We had adopted 4 kids. And make a very long story short, in less than a minute or so, we found out about a little girl named Marina, who we eventually adopted from Minsk, Belarus. That we were there. We found out that she has a sister, Svetlana. We adopted her. And as you know, that Juliana started fighting cancer in 2007. She fought it 8 times within 9 years. And she passed away in October of 2016. So this show about paying the price is just a little piece of a concept that if you decide to do the extraordinary, if you decide to do what's hard consistently, you're not only going to change your life, but you can very much likely change the life of other people that you may never meet. So I encourage you to pay the price every single day. My name's John Carver, and I appreciate you watching the show today. Thanks.